Hi, I'm C.C. Péan, and this is Reclaiming Your Health.
Hello and good evening, everyone. It's C.C. Péan. I know things look a little different tonight. I am, as I've told you, I'm in Miami working. Well, some of you may not know this. I actually am a chef that works with a lot of professional athletes. And I am currently working with Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. And I am in Miami while he's training. So this background looks different because I'm in my apartment in Miami and I'll be here through July 27th. So this evening, this is really different, obviously. I hope that there are people that have tuned in. Please give me a hail if you're there. I just wanted this evening to be a little different. And we created a flyer that said, ask me whatever. Ask me whatever you want to ask me. And I will try to answer it as I can, my best. But I also wanted to address a few things as it relates to healthy eating and diet and things like that. So as you all come in, if you have questions, feel free to chime in and send them up and put them in the chat. And we will. Furaha, how are you? I have a feeling that you're tuning in from, let me see, East Africa. Is that a good guess? Furaha? Let me know where you're signing in from. Thank you for joining us this evening. So I just wanted to talk about a few things because on Reclaiming Your Health, our greatest goal is optimal health. I try week after week to give you all different alternatives to the traditional and standard American diet or English diet or wherever you may be from, where there are things that have become part of the diet that are not really good for you. And so what I try to do is present you all with alternatives. And Nigeria, so West Africa, I was wrong, but hello, we're neighbors. My daddy is from Liberia, West Africa, so not too far away from you. And I love moi moi and fufu and egusi and all that good stuff, which are really good, which are really good foods and really, nutritious and nutrient dense. But I venture to give you all alternatives. So the last one we did, I believe, the last live one we did zucchini fritters. And I like to introduce things like that because one of the challenges when you're transitioning from a meat-based diet into a plant-based diet, there is a tendency to replace traditional meat or meat protein with soy protein and things like that. So for example, if you were eating a regular burger, now you're eating a, Impossible Burger or a Beyond Burger. And if you were eating turkey bacon or beef bacon or even pork bacon, now you're eating soy bacon. And I don't want to vilify those foods because they are better than meat, but there are a lot of processed foods that we introduce into our diet if we're not careful. So what I encourage people to do is to eat foods as close to their natural state as possible. So that means the other day, for example, I grated zucchini, I added a little chickpea flour and some spices, and we just with a little bit of oil, we pan fried those. So that's taking the place of like a burger, but it's totally vegetables. And so it's kind of retraining your mind of what actually constitutes a meal. In America, we have been taught that a standard meal is some kind of meat, some kind of starch, and some type of vegetable. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. You can have a plate of vegetables for dinner. And if you know how to season it with our herbs and we're building those layers of flavor and we're not using a lot of salt and we're not using a lot of oil, you can have a delicious meal that is nutrient dense, that gives your body everything it needs, and it's heart healthy and all that good stuff. So that's what our goal is. So this evening, what I wanted to do with you all, and Furaha has signed in from Nigeria, is answer some of your questions about ways to improve your diet, ways to eat healthier, things that we should be thinking about. You know, we're living in a time where food scarcity is becoming more and more. It used to be something that we never thought that we would deal with in places like America. But more and more, you're seeing now that you go to the grocery store and foods aren't available. Not only that, ever so often we hear about, there's a salmonella breakout or there's an E. coli breakout. And so even your vegetables are tainted. And so I wanted to talk about a few different things tonight to kind of empower you to be able to feed yourself and feed your family, and to not necessarily be as bothered and affected by these things that are happening because you have been proactive and you've put things in place. So one of the first things I want to talk to you about is seed sheets. So there is a company that I discovered. I think I may have heard about them on Facebook. They're called Seed Sheets, and you can see it on the screen right there. And Stan, if you can just kind of click around, I would appreciate it. So Seed Sheets makes growing vegetables incredibly easy, because what they do is they will mail you literally a sheet that's kind of like a burlap sheet that is embedded with seeds. And all you really have to do, if you see over there to the very far right, you get these raised planters, you place that seed sheet in there, you water it as directed, and in no time, you have your own garden. They have made, so there's the picture right there. They have made this so convenient, and no, I'm not an ambassador and I'm not getting any money for it, but it's something that I think is great. And if you are someone who is interested in gardening, you don't necessarily feel like you have a green thumb, but you would like to try it out, this is a great company to check out, Seed Sheets. You can choose exactly what seeds you want. You can choose what size of a seed sheet you want. So for example, it's just me and my husband, so we would have a smaller one. If you're trying to feed a larger family, they talk to you about all of that. They address all of that on their website, and it's a great resource. And we are living in a time where our food is being, I shouldn't say in a time now. I mean, this is something that's been going on all along, but I think it's getting worse, where our food is being saturated with pesticides and things like this. So this is a way for you to have these heart-healthy, nutrient-dense vegetables and things like that in their optimal state, because you're not buying them where they were picked young. They have been processed with something that you don't know what it is. They've been put in bags or whatever. You are controlling what is going into your body from farm to table. So I think it's a great product for you to look into. So it is seedsheets.com. Now, if you are somebody, one of the things that I have been waiting on for getting this is I need to figure out some kind of way to cover my planter, because there's a lot of birds and wildlife in my neighborhood. And I'm pretty sure the minute something sprouts up, it would be eaten. So that is something that you have to be mindful of. But if you're able, if you have like a covered, porch or something like that, that you can, have your raised planter on, or even if you have an in-ground planter, this is a great company. So please do check them out. And I would love to hear what you've chosen, and I would love to see the progress once you buy a seed sheet. So that is one thing. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you all about tonight is, quite often people have questions about things like, for example, if you want to transition not only to a plant-based lifestyle, but you want to, you find that you have like a gluten sensitivity or you have celiac disease, which is a significant um, reaction to gluten. And there are so many we are living in such an awesome time in terms of alternatives, because there are so many things out there that we can use in place of gluten, but we still have the experience of gluten. So we have all kinds of pastas that are made from like corn and rice and chickpeas and all of these things. We have flours. Bob's Mill has one of my favorite. Hi, Nyasha. Yeah, it's a great idea. It's a great idea, and you should try it. Bob's gluten-free one-to-one flour. I love that flour. I literally can swap it out for my, regular flour in recipes. Sometimes you'll have to do a little bit of tweaking, but for the most part, it is just it's one-to-one. So there's so many things out there that we can use now in place of traditional things. And I would encourage you to try something like gluten-free flour, because one of the things that I've discovered and I've realized is that sometimes we are so used to living with symptoms, and we don't realize that we actually have the power to address the cause that leads to the symptom. So, for example, whenever I eat cheese, my hands, my eczema acts up on my hand. I didn't realize that because before I was primarily plant-based, I was eating cheese all the time. And I just thought I just had eczema. It was something I couldn't control. Once I completely took it out, I recognized that I only had eczema when I ate cheese. I would have never known that had I not taken it out. Something else, there's something else that I used to eat and I didn't milk. Back in the day, I was always congested. I mean, I woke up every morning and would blow my nose like 20 times. And once I stopped eating milk, it completely went away. So if you're a person who has minor skin eruptions or congestion, things like that, you even sometimes it can make your arthritis act up. If you're eating really fatty foods like mayonnaise and things like that, can make your arthritis act up. I would suggest you go to should one get tested for allergies prior to transitioning to a vegan lifestyle? I would say that's a good suggestion. I mean, even if you're not going to transition to a vegan lifestyle, it's good to arm yourself with that information, because what you could be doing is you could be contributing to a health issue unknowingly. It's really interesting. There are commercials that you'll see from time to time that will say, oh, I love to eat pizza, but it gives me heartburn. So now I eat a Prilosec and I can eat all the pizza I want. The fact that you have heartburn when you eat pizza means you shouldn't eat pizza. It doesn't mean that you need to go out and get a Prilosec. So you may not be experiencing the symptoms, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the damage is not being done. So you need to be mindful of that. So Roger, that's a great question. I would totally suggest, if you are able to, if you have the insurance, I would go out and I would have an allergy test done to see exactly what is going on with your body. Foods have changed so much in my lifetime. I'm 51 years old, and I remember a time when pure sugar was what went into things. Now you rarely see pure sugar. Everything is corn syrup. Well, if you have a grain allergy and you're drinking something, you're not thinking there's a derivative of a grain in it, but that's what corn syrup is. And you could be having some kind of reaction to it unknowingly. So I would absolutely encourage you all to not only take an allergy test if you can. If you're not in a position to take an allergy test, what I would suggest you do is go to a very, very basic diet. So I'm talking, you're doing fruits, you're doing vegetables, and you're doing whole grains. And what you can gradually do, yes, Melissa, I do, and I'll get right to that. Do I have any recipes or suggestions for a sweet tooth? What you gradually do is you will gradually add things back into your diet, and you very well may add that thing back, and boom, you realize that this is a problem for you. So that's how you can do that. So actually, I had this tonight, a sweet treat that is good for you. It's not processed. You can take a medjool date. They're some of the best dates out there. You take the seed out. You can take like a half a tablespoon of nut butter and put that inside there and chew away. It's delicious. It's sweet. You know, if you have nut butter that has a little bit of salt in it, it has like a sweet, salty type of thing, but it's delicious. I need to turn up my air conditioner. I am perspiring. Yeah, so that's something. And you know, Melissa, one of the things that I encourage people to do is to reintroduce pure food to their bodies and to their palate. And in doing so, you will have a greater appreciation for food in its natural state. Our diet is so incredibly oversalted. It is so incredibly oversweetened that a piece of fruit is not appreciated for what it really is giving you, because it's like your palate is deadened by all the sugar and the salt that we take in on the daily. And I mentioned this on one of my cooking nights with you all, and that is that you can retrain your palate. And I think it's like every 10 days, your taste buds regenerate. So that means if what you're eating is healthy, if it's pure, if it's in its natural state, that is what you're going to crave. Maybe a little difficult for the first few days. If you're somebody who has like a sugar addiction, you might go through some tremors there. I mean, it's real. Some of us are addicted to sugar and we have no idea. And you won't know until you try to take it out of your diet. But if you do that and you introduce, I will address that, Nyasha. If you do that and you introduce pure fruit into your diet, you will have a greater appreciation for it. You will taste things that you never did taste. And here's something else. You know, if you go to some of these international markets, I think that those are great resources because they market to people that are used to eating fruits and vegetables that are kind of unmessed around with. For example, the banana that we are used to in this country is the Cavendish banana. That is something that has been grafted, it has been created, it has been molded in a certain way to withstand being shipped from places like Ecuador and these different plantations that Dole, et cetera, has around the world. Real bananas are sugary sweet. They're delicious. And when you bite into them, you actually see the big seeds that are supposed to come in bananas. Well, where do you find these types of things? You find them at Asian markets. You find them at Spanish markets. You're not going to necessarily find them at Publix. And I know that they're getting a little better. Publix and Kroger's and things like that are recognizing that they have a more international customer base. So they're bringing things in. But I can guarantee you, if you go to your local Asian market, you're going to find fruit, you're going to find vegetables that you would not find in the traditional, run-of-the-mill, big box grocery store here in America. So that's a suggestion. So I was asked about mixing fruit and vegetables. There are a lot of different schools of thought on that. What I will say is that there are some vegetables there are some fruits that we consider vegetables that are actually fruit. So there's that. But I personally, I have not had any issues with that. For example, I'm talking about fruits and vegetables. Tomato is actually a cucumber, actually a fruit. So if you do um, apple and ginger and cucumber and things like that, throw a handful of spinach in there. Um, it's not going to bother you. It's not going to mess up. The issue with that, people are quite often concerned with that because there is a school of thought that says it messes with your digestion, that they digest differently. Okay, we're back. Yeah, I'm totally fine with being corrected. Okay. Is everything okay? Let me know. I know I went out for a moment. When you're juicing, when you're juicing, um, things are being okay, great. When you're juicing, things are they're being juiced. You're getting rid of a lot of the fiber. So what you're processing, it's different than if you were, eating those things. So I personally, I have not had any issue with it, and I would not think that it's that big of a deal, specifically when it comes to juicing. Um, so we spoke about flours, different types of, gluten-free options that are out there. We spoke about the seed sheets. Something else I want to address, which is actually very important, is oils, the different types of oils to use. And, I grew up with vegetable oil. And then the next thing was canola oil. And there really wasn't much thought to it was a super processed product. It was just something that you used. And now we're armed with much more information. We know that there are certain oils that are better to be used at very, very high temperatures. For example, if you're doing frying, which we shouldn't be doing too much of anyway, but there are certain oils that are best suited for that. Things like peanut oil, things like olive oil, your nut oils and things like that. Now, palm oil is that is a product that uh, that can bring a lot of discussion and arguments. And my father's from West Africa. Palm oil is something that is used. I mean, it's used abundantly. Palm oil has its properties that are good for you, but it definitely is something that should be used in moderation because it is a very heavy oil, and it actually does have the fat in it is it's a really, really heavy oil. And it is the kind of thing that if you're not used to it, it can create some digestive distress. So palm oil is something that should be used very, very much in moderation. Actually, if I use palm oil most of the time, if I'm making greens or something like my dad's traditional greens, like a sava leaf or something like that, I'll just do a drizzle of it on top. That's not something that I really use much of. But the oils that are best for you to use are things like avocado oil, macadamia oil, olive oil is good. Try to stay away from the like grape seed. It's not it, it's okay, but it's not best. um Peanut oil, as I said earlier, is oil that can be used for frying. It has a high smoke point, I think of like 465 degrees, as does olive oil. But you need to try to find oils that are less processed, and vegetable oil and canola oil are highly processed oils. So you need to try to avoid that. Um, Avocado oil and macadamia oil they're not highly processed. What is a good marinade for tofu to give it a fish-like taste? Well, there are so many sea vegetables that you can use to do that. One key ingredient for uh, giving a fish-like taste to tofu are nori flakes or nori sheets. We know nori as what sushi is rolled in, those seaweed seeds. That's one of them. Dulse, Dulse, is something else that you can use, and it's incredibly good because it's from the sea and it has got that natural iodine that's great for your body. Let's see what else I use. Capers. Capers have that briny sea type of flavor to it. So you could always add the brine from capers, or you can chop them up very finely and you can use that in your marinade. I also find that ginger has a way of adding that type of quality, especially when it is coupled with something like tamari or soy sauce. So nori, kelp, dulse, capers, all of those things are great. If you want to make a marinade, with the capers and some of the dulse and the nori and some tamari, you put it in your blender, you whip it up, make sure you press that tofu and marinate to touch on tonight. And I didn't know if you all had any questions, um, any other questions that you wanted to ask me. Would it be best to start with a basic diet versus processed plant? But yes, absolutely. Look, I enjoy an Impossible Burger from time again. We really need to eat foods. I know I sound like a broken record, as close to its natural state as possible. And okay, so the question was, should we avoid eating processed vegan foods? Okay, would it be best to start with a basic diet versus processed plant-based products when going vegan? Absolutely. And I was saying, I know that I sound like a broken record when I address this, but the reality is those foods are processed. They're processed, and there's a lot of preservatives and a lot of things that go into these foods to make them taste the way they do, to make them look like meat, to make them taste like meat. I mean, we even have instances now with meat alternatives that bleed like meat. So have a mushroom instead. Make a zucchini fritter instead. Make a chickpea burger instead. You are controlling every aspect of that product that you are putting into your body. And we are living in a world, as I said earlier, where there are all kinds of things that are being put into foods. And remember, just because it is on the grocery store shelf does not mean that it is healthy or good for you. You cannot outsource your health to the Food and Drug Administration. You can't do it. That governmental organization is plagued with lobbyists, and their bottom line is money. Even when we talk about nut milk now, you can make your own nut milk at home. It's really not difficult. It's really not difficult. Now, it's not going to last long. You might have to make it every couple of days, but at least you know exactly what is going into your body. So many of these nut milks nowadays have carrageenan in it. Do you know what I noticed the other day? I'm somebody who loves coconut milk. I'm West Indian, West African, and I love the creaminess of coconut milk. And I'll do light from time to time. But if you go to a grocery store now and you pick up a can of coconut milk and you turn to the back, I can almost guarantee you, but for a few circumstances, I think Goya is one that is 100%. There are a few that are 100%, and you'll typically know that because they're going to cost a lot more. Most cans of coconut milk now are like 3% coconut milk. There's water in it. There's guar gum in it. There are all these different additives. There's coconut extract or coconut flavor. It's the same packaging. It's the same thing that we have been eating all along, purchasing all along, so we don't think to check it. So, I'm encouraging you all to be vigilant about what you're eating, be vigilant about what you're buying, what you're cooking, what you're putting into your body, what you're putting into your temple, because it does matter. These 30 minutes went by so quickly. I had a little more. Is there a good substitute for salt when boiling water for pasta or vegetables, or should I not worry about salt? One of the things that I have started doing for Raha is I use like low sodium vegetable broth. I use that now if I'm doing pasta because it gets a little bit of that flavor in there. I was taught in cooking school, when you're blanching vegetables and when you're making pasta, that your water should taste like the sea. So that's a good amount of salt. But what I have started doing now is I use low sodium broth. And sometimes I'll throw a half of an onion in that water, and I'll throw my herbs in that water, and I'll let all of that get in that water before my pasta hits. And that's, again, how we build those layers of flavor that in the end result, we don't need as much salt as we typically would. If there's one last question, any other questions? We have exhausted our time this evening. You are welcome, Roger and Faraha. Yes. And let me know how that works out. But there's so many things that we can do to better serve our bodies, our temples. We have to be vigilant people. We have to empower ourselves and not outsource our health to people that don't really care. They're more concerned about the dollar and their bottom line. So thank you for joining me this week on Reclaiming Your Health. We'll probably do this every, maybe once a month or so, just to kind of chop things up. But I appreciate your questions. And if you have any other questions that you would like me to address next week while I'm cooking, send them in and we will address them. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great night.